Okay, so today we're going to start talking about the United States Constitution. We've already talked about the causes of the American Revolutionary War. We said that there were several causes that started from the French and Indian War to the Proclamation of 1763 that said that colonists could not move west of the Appalachian Mountains or not west of Georgia. And if they moved west of there already, they had to move back. That led into several other things. One of the other things that it led to was the fact that Great Britain had spent so much money on the war that now they had to figure out how to pay for it. So they began to tax the colonists. The colonists were not happy about that. One of the things that they were not happy about was the Stamp Act, which made them put a stamp on anything that they sent in and out. So they weren't happy about that. Georgia paid that tax without complaining because their governor at the time, James Wright, was a loyalist and he was loyal to England. Along that same time, the Boston Tea Party happened up in the colony of Massachusetts. And after that happened, Great Britain or England was very upset again. The Intolerable Acts happened. Everybody was still upset, led into fighting amongst the people and amongst the colonists. After the Intolerable Acts, the Sons of Liberty were formed. In Georgia, they were called the Liberty Boys. Eventually, all of that led into the American Revolutionary War and basically a declaration of independence from England, given by the colonists, that said, I don't want to be with you anymore. It was basically a breakup letter. They said, I don't want to be with you anymore. And then that led up to the war. So we're going to get into our next piece of the puzzle. And our next piece of the puzzle is going to be H3, analyze the role of Georgia in the American Revolutionary Era. D, analyze the weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation and explain how those weaknesses led to the writing of a new federal constitution. America's first written constitution was not the constitution that we have today, but it was another document called the Articles of Confederation. And what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about that first constitution and the powers that the national government had, as well as some of the weaknesses that were observed within the Articles of Confederation. So, America's first written constitution was not the constitution that we have in place today. After the Revolutionary War ended, America had no national government. They had nobody to help them. They had nobody to say, here's what we need to do. They were kind of sort of left. So although they were complaining that they were not a part of Parliament, they really had no idea how to run a government. So in 1777, colonial representatives worked together to write a new government plan called the Articles of Confederation. Now here you see members of this new government, these new government officials drafting the Articles of Confederation. It took 4 years for all 13 states to sign it, and the Articles of Confederation finally went into effect on March 1st, 1781. The article set up a republican democracy where citizens elect people to represent them. So each colony would have somebody representing them. The articles created a very weak central government. They gave states a lot of power over their own affairs. So rather than have a nation or all the 13 colonies who kind of had their own or kind of had one centralized government so that they could sustain themselves, every single colony kind of sort of made their own rules. Confederation. Americans were scared of giving too much power to the central government because they had just fought for independence from a powerful government. They felt like England or Great Britain was already a central government and they did not want to go back there. They did not want to go back to basically having a ruler. So they viewed the states as independent and the United States as more of a loose confederation of states working together only when they had to work together. They didn't want to lose their hard-won independence by turning the new government into another tyrant. So they didn't want to have one person who controlled it. Basically, everybody was going to do their own thing. The new U.S. government could declare war and sign treaties, but that was about the extent of its power. There was no strong national government. There was no leader in charge. The states had a lot of power, but they could never agree on anything, no matter how hard they tried. If somebody said go left, somebody else said go right. They could not get themselves together, and they could not agree on hardly anything. There were some weaknesses within the Articles of Confederation. The new U.S. government cannot establish a national army without the permission of everybody. So I can't have an army just in case Great Britain comes back unless the permission of all the states was granted. It couldn't put any taxes. So the government couldn't be funded, and we couldn't pay for basic things that we needed. We couldn't pay for soldiers. We couldn't pay any of our debts because it couldn't levy any taxes. So there were no taxes. People were so distraught and were so upset that Great Britain had all that power that they were afraid to relinquish power to anybody. The government couldn't regulate trade among the states. So states could put tariffs on each other. So I could say in Georgia, I could say to Florida, well, if you want to come across here to go up to one of the Carolinas, you got to pay me $15,000 because each state had their own rules. Nobody had a joint rule. It provided for no judicial or executive branch, only one House legislative branch. So one could not judge the other. There was no set of laws and no set of rules put in place to say that all the colonies had to follow this law or all the colonies had to do really anything. Congress could make laws, but not force states to comply with them. So the Congress could make a law that says you can't charge more than $10 to cross the state lines. But if I didn't want to do that, I could charge you $50 because there was nobody enforcing the laws. Each state only received one vote, no matter how many people were there. I don't care if Georgia had 50,000 people and Rhode Island had 50 people. Everybody got one vote. And all 13 colonies had to approve a law for it to pass. So if Florida decided that they did not want to approve a law, the law did not get taken to the next level. Each state had its own currency. So if I bartered using a dollar and somebody else bartered using a yen and somebody else bartered using a peso, there was nothing that said everybody had the same currency. Everybody just did what they wanted. The United States did not have a common currency under the Articles of Federation. So if you look here, you'll see that the state of New York, this is their $10 bill. But over here in Massachusetts, they have 56 shillings and a fixed pence. So they had totally different currency. So it was hard for them to barter and buy things from one another because they didn't have a common currency. So they soon began to realize this isn't working. It soon became apparent that the Articles of Confederation had to be changed, had to be revised because the national government was too weak. The states argued over borders and trade, and Congress had no power to stop them. Foreign governments did not know if they were dealing with one country or 13 different ones. And the country's economy got worse. George Washington called the Articles of Confederation a half-starved, limping government. Think about that for a minute. A half-starved, limping government. He did not have any faith in the Articles of Confederation. So now we have a new constitution. The founders realized that the Articles of Confederation were too weak to effectively govern the country, and they had to change it. It had to be revised. So in May of 1787, delegates or representatives from all 13 states met in Philadelphia with the intent to change the Articles. Everybody had a representative. This is Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where lots and lots of laws were debated and rules were changed. The members ended up discarding the Articles of Confederation and writing a completely new document. This meeting became known as the Constitutional Convention. Georgia selected 6 delegates to the Constitutional Convention. 2 delegates did not attend, and 2 other people left early. Abraham Baldwin and William Few signed the U.S. Constitution as members of the Georgia delegation. This is a picture of Abraham Baldwin. During the Constitutional Convention, Baldwin was involved in debates over the issue of states' representation in Congress. Small states were concerned that they would be outvoted by large states. When he realized that small states might withdraw from the convention, Baldwin changed his vote to side with the smallest states because he felt a little bit bad for them. His vote forced a tie, and the issue was sent to a committee for further review. Baldwin helped develop the Great Compromise to solve the representation dilemma. This created a bicameral legislature where each state had 2 members in the Senate, but representation in the House of Representatives was based on the state's population. The compromise pulled the convention out of a complete standstill. Here, you see a picture of all of the men who were there as delegates of the different colonies. After the delegates' debate was settled, the new Constitution was signed on September 17, 1787. The U.S. Constitution is the written plan that establishes the framework for America's government. This is page 1 of the original copy of the United States Constitution. The U.S. Constitution describes how the country's government is organized and how power is divided. It describes what the government may do and what they may not do. The U.S. Constitution also establishes America's government as a democracy and limits the power of the government, which means everybody has a vote. As a democracy, the people hold the power of the government because they can vote. Citizens vote to decide issues and choose representatives. The basic rights of American citizens are protected by the U.S. Constitution. William Few. By 1787, most Georgians supported a strong central government. Georgia's other delegate to the convention, William Few, represented Georgians well by voting in favor of the national government during critical times at the convention. He worked diligently to make sure that the Constitution was ratified or carried over. This is a picture of William Few. On January 2nd, 1788, Georgia was the 4th state to ratify the U.S. Constitution, the 4th out of the 13 colonies. Many Georgians favored a strong national government that could protect them from American Indians and the Spanish in Florida. Georgians in coastal regions also hoped that a strong central government would improve trade regulations.